The year was 1973, and my mother had just gotten, as a gift, a brand new Volkswagen Bug that my father had purchased for her. It was her first new car. She'd had the thing for about a hot 20 minutes. So that afternoon, it was pouring rain, sheets of rain. And I actually came with my mother to pick up my sister at the Lawrence School, which is at the end of Dillingham Ave, which is the end of that road. And we came to this intersection. And she came through this intersection, just like these folks are. She came right here and got hit, almost like I just did. She got hit 3 times and ran headlong into what is left of that tree. There's now a secondary tree there, but what's that moss or the ivy that's covering that is where the tree was, because at the end of that story, they ended up cutting down the tree because it was so badly damaged. The tree, or I should say, the Volkswagen did not survive. It was completely totaled. It had crushed every surface of the vehicle to the point where it was undrivable, even in the state that it was. Miraculously, though, I didn't die, and I wasn't injured, nor was my mother. I had a scratch on my right arm, and my mother had a scratch on her left arm, and that was it. We both should have died in that car crash, but didn't. This is not a story of I should have died and I didn't. It's not a depressing story. I'm going to take you to 3 places, well, this is the first of the 3, where I should have died and I didn't. And I want to tell you a tiny little story at the end. So I'm going to show you the other 2, and then we're going to come back to someplace else and I'll show you a tiny little something. You'll see. I was 11 years old, and I was driving with my sister in the first of 2 Dodge Darts, and we came to this intersection of John Parker Road. She was taking a right turn from John Parker onto 28 and misjudged the oncoming traffic and completely totaled the car. Miraculously, that's a little foreshadowing, by the way. Miraculously, though, both my sister and I walked away from that without a scratch. The car, on the other hand, was a complete write-off. The engine was sitting in the passenger seat, and it got spun around several times. Suffice it said, I shouldn't be here. Now we're going to number 3. Crash number 3. This one takes a little bit to explain, but crash number 3 happened right here and ended up right there. I was 21 years old, and I had been drinking that night, and I was not the driver. My friend Jay was the driver, and Jay is, well, at that point in time, he was a bit of a wild card, and Lord knows what he would do. But we came to a party near, a little bit further back, and right there on that corner is a hairpin corner. Right there, that's a hairpin corner. And there was a guy coming this way. He comes along this way and swerves right into our line. And in doing so, Jay had to swerve, and we were a little bit inebriated. He swerved a whole lot and ended up right here, right in this forest. It wasn't that overgrown at that point in time. We ended up right here, wrapped around that tree. You can sort of see where that tree isn't anymore, and that's because there was an engine attached to it. Jay's engine. He completely totaled the car, and for lack of a better way of putting it, almost ended his life that night. And not because he was drunk, but because he was trying to save both of our lives. So, the story has a happy ending, by the way. So, what ended up happening was the engine ended up in the front seat and broke my right arm right there, and that was it. Jay, on the other hand, ended up with 6 broken ribs, both broken legs, both broken femurs, a broken foot, a shattered jaw, and a head fracture. And miraculously survived to tell the tale. We're not done with the story yet, though. I have one more thing to show you. So you're going to say to yourself, Miles, what did these 3 accidents have to do with you? It sounds like a morbid story. And you'd be right. So let me fill you in. Or as Paul Harvey used to say, and now the rest of the story. So when I was 5 years old, I really didn't have a whole lot in my head other than dolphins and dinner. And that was it. And then right after that car accident, everybody said that there was nothing wrong with me, but there was something definitely not right with me because my head was filled with imagery. And I couldn't get my head out of it. I couldn't, and it was not the same imagery. It was just my head actually hurt from so many images. I just I couldn't stop it. The images just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. So by the time I was 11 years old, I had just reconciled the fact that, this would be my distraction for the rest of my life. And I had no outlet, or seemingly no outlet, for what was in my head. About 2 days right after that accident happened, my mother went out shopping and then came back with a drawing pad, a drawing kit. That drawing kit was basically a 24 by 27 pad of newspaper print paper with charcoal. And she said to me, draw something. So I did. I burned through that first pad in about 2 hours and then could not wait to get my next one. And then I burned through the next 3 in a day each. I just burned through pad after pad after pad after pad after pad after pad. It became, my mother was so besides herself. She's like, what did I do? She hit the mother load is what she did. To make a very long story short, I was obsessed with the images in my head and what I was putting on paper. And what were the images? It's what you're seeing right now. I could not stop drawing the beach, the waves, the rocks, the bluffs. That's the images that I saw in my head over and over and over and over again. And I felt such a compulsion to draw them. So by the time, but between the time that I was 11 and the time that I was 21 in the third car crash, there was never a point at which I did not have a drawing pad on me. So I graduated from charcoal to pencil, and then from pencil to ink. And that happened in a very short space of time. When I turned 12, And that next summer, or I should say that year that I was 12 years old, I actually got in trouble. What did I get in trouble for? I got in trouble because I was doodling in class. That doodle, believe it or not, won me first prize at an art competition, which my teacher, who claimed that I was doodling, Mr. Papsadora, actually handed that doodle to the art teacher, who got me into art class almost immediately thereafter, and then got me installed in an art club or something, some such nonsense that I absolutely hated. But that drawing actually got me into a competition, an art competition, which I think is absolutely stupid. But I won first place, and I never stopped drawing after that. I was obsessed anyways, but I was obsessed even more, and not because I had won a competition, but because there was recognition that, hey, I can do something. So there was never a point between the time that I was 11 and that I was 21 that I didn't have a pen in my hand or a piece of paper to draw on. I was always drawing what was in my head. And then the third accident happened. And what happened was that this bone right here, you can see that knobbiness right there, broke. And my dexterity went right out the window, and I basically could not draw anymore. And I was so beside myself that I was so unhappy that I couldn't draw, and I had piles of paper. It's not like I didn't have materials. I had the materials, I had the tools, but I just felt like I couldn't draw anymore. And it wasn't until my then girlfriend, Sandy, basically came over one afternoon and said to me, "You need to go draw. It's driving you crazy." And I said, I can't. So we got on my moped, and she had taken one of my little drawing pads and my pen and ink set and stuck them in her backpack, and we came out to where I'm at right now, which is Woodneck Beach. And she did the same thing that my mother did to me. She took out of her backpack my pen and paper and said, "Draw!" And I did. It was hard. It was hard at first. It was very hard. Nothing looked like what I saw in my head. But slowly but certainly, I kept drawing over and over and over and over again what I was seeing. The images in my head and real life. And that's when my art took a very distinct turn. A very distinct turn. Because I couldn't do the things that I used to do before. I picked up another talent, another style of drawing, and that's called pointillism. And that's basically where you use little dots to create shapes. Wow. It completely changed my art, completely redirected my skill set. And if you thought I was obsessed before, I was even more obsessed now. And my OCD, or as one of my former students says, CDO, because that's the way that it should be. Anyways, my CDO kicked in, and I pointillismed my brains out for years after that. But all three of those accidents had a major twist on my life and my art. If it weren't for those accidents, I probably would never have picked up a pen and a piece of paper. Or at least something in me after the point at which I was 5 changed. And the obsession to draw drove me when I was 11, and it upset me when I was 21 and I couldn't. And then I finally started drawing again. So much so to the point where I turned my art into something commercial. The very first of 6 lines of greeting cards and postcards and t-shirts and a whole bunch of whatnot after that. And then commercial art. And then that turned me on to graphic design. And that graphic design turned me on to image editing and photo reproduction, 4-color printing process. And that turned me on to computer-aided design, computer graphics design, which then turned me on to web development, which then turned me into webmastering, and that turned me on to Lasso, and that turned me on to a whole bunch of programming languages, and that turned me into web development, and that's where I stopped almost 20 years ago. Oh, and in case you're wondering, am I still drawing today? Well, duh. Only now I don't need pen and paper anymore. iPad, baby. And an application called Procreate. So you heard me say very early on, in probably, a million videos ago, that, I didn't want to sell my iPad and it would kind of sort of impact how and what I was doing. It wasn't the video editing, even though I'm using it now more for video editing almost every day to edit this stuff. I'm actually using it for my artwork. So I use an application called Procreate, and here's just a small sampling of what I'm doing with my iPad. That I usually wake up every single day, and I'm either editing video or I'm creating a piece of artwork. So my art looks very different from what it used to. Right now I'm sort of in a weed phase. I don't know why. It's just this is what my head is filled with. I can't get it's the OCD thing. So yeah, there's that. See? Good ending. All right, that's where I'm going to leave you today. That is enough of me yapping. Now you know a little bit more about me than you did yesterday. Do you really care? Probably not. But hopefully it was a good story. All right, thanks a bunch for watching, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere on the road. Bye!